Hey folks, I hope that you're all doing well today. I wanted to remind you before starting in on the bullet points for today's lecture that by today, April 1st at noon, you needed to have emailed me your midterm essay. Again, that's noon today, April 1st. You needed to have emailed me your midterm essay on pre-production. So I'm going to get into tech communication and coordination today. You will see several videos posted on Blackboard for you to watch in addition to the lecture. The bullet points for the lecture are basically what happens during tech, what's the first step, and that first step is really getting out of the rehearsal studio and moving into the theater, and being as specific as you can with your lists for what's packed where, with information about spike marks. Um, Really, even though it's not part of the entire tech process, moving into the theater is the first step for me in tech. The next real step is once you're in the theater, making sure that there is space for you at the table. I have no idea why it's forgotten, but often people forget to set up a space for the stage manager. Sometimes headsets don't even happen right away, and it always is shocking to me because headsets and communication are the tools that stage management need to do a good job in tech. You have to be able to communicate with everybody, and you can't do that by yelling across the stage for your assistant. Um, it really doesn't work well. So, making sure, and that may be a question in a pre production meeting, even before moving into the theater, um, a question for everybody in your production team: when do headsets get set up? Remember that I need a light. I have no idea why people forget that stage managers actually need to be able to see their script during tech, but it's true, they do quite often. Um, so the simple things of remembering a light and making sure headsets are getting set up are very important to a stage manager's ability to do their job well. There is a headset video for you to watch. When you are reading the lecture, you'll see that I have a breakout point for you to go watch the headset lecture and then come back to the lecture itself. But for now, I'm just going to keep going and get all the bullet points in. But at this point, you should you should watch the headset lecture because it's really informative about communication and how the systems work. The order, and this is just so our terminology is clear going forward, and I know that you all have heard these terms somewhere in your theatrical education. The order in which things can happen in tech. Paper tech doesn't always happen anymore, but paper tech, you, the designer's director, meet anywhere and go through the script and place some preliminary cues. Next, um, you might have a spacing day in the theater. The first thing that might happen when you move in there is the director respacing the show now that he's actually in the space and sees the sight lines. Often when this happens, the lighting designer will actually write cues over the rehearsal, and it usually doesn't affect the rehearsal too much, but gives the lighting designer an opportunity to get ahead. After a spacing day, you will often have a dry technical rehearsal. A dry tech is a technical rehearsal in the theater without the actors. It allows the lighting designer and sound designer, projection designer, if there is one, to write cues without keeping the cast waiting for extra time and long hours while they get a preliminary sketch of their design into their boards. After dry tech, you'll move to a cue to cue technical rehearsal or a standard technical rehearsal, which would just be running the show slowly and stopping when needed to write cues. A cue to cue technical rehearsal is one where you're literally jumping from one cue to the next cue to the next cue to the next cue. And you're not giving the actors time. There's really no need for them to do the internal dialogue. You're just getting the different places where your designers need to see their cues happen. And that's in a cue to cue where you're really jumping from cue to cue to cue to cue. I love cue to cue. A lot of people don't. A lot of people find that it breaks the show up into too many different parts, that you're deconstructing the show so much that it's hard to come back to it. But I love cue to cue. I find that it makes for a very fast technical rehearsal, and allows us usually to move to a dress tech rehearsal, which would be the next phrase I want you all to remember. A dress tech faster than normal. So a dress tech is one where you, just like it sounds, you add the costumes. You don't usually add the costumes to tech because tech can be really long hours and you don't want the costumes to get dirty. You don't want the costumes to get paint on them. Believe it or not, there are people who will paint a stage at 8 a.m. with actors on stage at 11 a.m. or noon. And it's one thing if you have to replace an actor's personal piece of clothing, a t shirt or a pair of shorts. It's a whole other thing if you have to replace a costume that may or may not be something that you can get in time for curtain in 3 days or whatever it may be. Um, so after dress tech, you're going to have a final dress rehearsal, which is sometimes an invited rehearsal, sometimes not. Um, and then you're going to have a show. We will talk again next week about cueing and all the specifics that are involved in that. There's some great videos for you to watch to help you understand how to cue a show. Um, but that's pretty much the schedule for tech, as it were. So, the last thing that I would mention for today's lecture is rehearsal reports. They usually still happen in tech, believe it or not. Rehearsal reports still happen in tech. Sometimes your production manager will do them, but often the stage manager will still do them. A lot of times the notes are simply notes as given in rehearsal or notes as given in production meeting. You don't need to detail the entire list because everybody's taking their own list of notes, but you are letting the producers know, the people who are not in the room know what happened. If there's anything in particular that needs to be noted, you will put it in the report. I was asked, for example, on Urinetown to make sure that I notated in the report the inadequacy of the projection system. They have an old video system that's probably 5 years out of date and it kept crashing on us. In fact, it crashed on us in performance. That was loads of fun. Um, and they had me notate that, and I did it several times throughout tech and even into performance so that next year, when our artistic director goes to them to rent the space or to move into the space, he can have a discussion about getting a new video system and have my reports to back that argument up with. All right, so you want to watch all the videos. There's several of them. I'm very lucky to have David McGraw as someone who volunteered some videos that he's made over the years. And they're really informative. They're long, but they're really great, and I hope that you watch them all. Next week's homework due on April 7th because for whatever reason we were originally scheduled on a Tuesday class. So it's due April 7th. You want to read chapter 6 and you need to write me a 5-sentence summary of today's lecture and the videos and everything that you watched, everything that you learned. 5 sentences just to show me that you actually read the lecture, watched this, watched the other videos, and learned something from today. Again, if anybody wants to get in touch, if anybody wants one-on-one time, just shoot me an email and I am happy to video conference with any one of you anytime, all right? I hope you have a great week and I will talk to you next Tuesday. Thanks!